Hi you guys! Welcome back to my channel. And today we are going to be discussing Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. Now, the way Cinderella 3 starts out is Prince Charming and Cinderella are celebrating their anniversary. And Cinderella is singing about how it's been a perfect year. And then Prince Charming comes, and then he he starts playing around with her because he had their shoes, but Prince Charming won't give her shoes. And then he puts the shoes on her feet, and then he spins her around, and then they go horseback riding to meet the fairy godmother, and then and then we pop over to Anastasia and Priscilla. Now, ever since Cinderella has been living in the castle, Anastasia and Priscilla have had ha, ha, had to be doing had to be doing all the cleaning, and they sing how it's been a terrible year for them. And then Anastasia and Priscilla get in a fight, and then Gisela pushes her outside, and she gets a glimpse of Cinderella and the prince going off into the woods where fairy godmother is waiting, and they do a secret dance. And they do a secret dance in the woods because the fairy godmother has put them in the same clothes as she as they were wearing in the first movie, and they were singing how it's gonna be a wonderful year again. But although Anastasia followed them and she saw the whole thing, so she saw the fairy godmother, and she knows that she only got the prince because of magic. But she actually got the prince because of her kind heart. But, it's a Disney movie, so they're gonna say, because of magic. So, while singing the song, Fairy Godmother drops the wand right in front of Anastasia, and she gets the wand and says, perfect. So she runs back home and shows her mother, and shows her, and, and, and And she actually shows her mother and her sister Gisela the wand. But they just think she's crazy and that she lost her mind, and they think it's a stick. But the fairy godmother says, oh, there it is. Child, put that down. And then, because the fairy godmother was looking for the wand, and then she saw that Anastasia had it. So she said, child, put that down. In the wrong hands, that magic wand can be extremely dangerous. So the fairy godmother tries to get it back from Anastasia, but Anastasia says, no. This is my wand, you silly old garden gnome. And And then, the first time she said bibbity boppity boo, because the first time she says bibbity boppity boo, she turns Lucifer into a duck. And then the second time she says bippity boppity boo, she turns the fairy godmother into stone. And and she tries to see if she's okay by saying, "Hello? Hello? Are you okay?" But the fairy godmother doesn't answer because she's turned into stone. But since the stepmother sees this, and then she takes the wand from Anastasia and says, "Oh, this is how Cinderella did it. What delicious irony." And then, and, and then, and then, and then, and, 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 and then she says to the girls, "Do you realize what this means, girls?" And this is when, and this is when, and, 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 and this is when Priscilla says, "Yes, no more laundry." And no, the stepmother says, "This means revenge." So she turns back time and make it where Cinderella and her whole family can go back to the day where the Grand Duke came to the house. So she turns back time and nobody knows except for them that she's turned back time. So she puts the wand in her dress sleeve. And why that's not bugging her, I would not know. Because if something was in my sleeve, it would so bug me. So why the magic wand isn't bugging her, I do not know why this is. But she turns back time before the Grand Duke can get there. And then she uses the wand on Anastasia, so Anastasia fits the slipper, that the one slipper that is Cinderella's slipper. So, so since Anastasia fits the slipper, they are off to the palace. And one minor note here. When the stepmother had the wand back in the woods, Anastasia said, "Oh, I want a prince of my own." And Gisela just wanted to become filthy. And Gisela just wanted to become filthy, stinking rich. Her words, not mine. And Anastasia wants a prince of her own. So since her mother made her fit the slipper instead of Cinderella, because Cinderella, as you may remember, in the first one she was locked in a closet. And in this one, she was locked in the closet. But since the stepmother used the magic wand, now Anastasia is off to the palace. And Cinderella gets there far too late. And then Cinderella tells her, "How can the slipper fit your daughter Anastasia? I danced with the princess with my slipper." And then she does the most ridiculous thing in the movie. She pulls the slipper that she saved out of her dress, and how she held it in her dress, I do not know, because that is glass, and if her dress would have fallen, the slipper would have gotten broken. But anyway, back to what I was saying. She pulls the slipper out. Then the stepmother takes her face takes her face and says, you may have danced with them. You may have thought it was love. But the slipper fits Anastasia, and that's who he's marrying. I don't care where you go or what you do, but you stay away from the palace and you stay away from the prince. And whatever you think happened last night was a dream. And then the stepmother gets the glass slipper with her cane and she breaks it down the stairs. And then when she walks out, she says, "Oh, and clean up that broken glass." And then Jack and Gus says, "What just happened?" And then Cinderella goes to the floor. She picks up the glass, and for some reason, the glass that she puts together turns into a heart. And then she sings this little song of I have always dreamed. Wait. No. That wasn't the name of the song. It was called So Much More Than a Dream. That's what the name of the song was called. Sorry, I had the hiccups. So while Anastasia is sad, Gus starts crying, and this is when Jack says, "Don't cry, Gus, 'cause the prince knows that he danced with Cinderella," and that is oh so true. The prince knows that he danced with Cinderella, and might I just say, they gave the prince so much personality in this one, and I love it because the shot that we see next when Anastasia is on her way to the palace and not Cinderella, the shot that we see next before Anastasia arrives is them doing jousting, and he is discussing with his father that it's not the slipper that I want. It's the girl in the slipper that I want. And let me just say, they are pretty good at jousting and fencing in this movie. And it's a nice, him jousting with his father and talking about his mother in past tense is a very, very, very nice touch. And might I just say, even though the prince's mother has just passed on, she was a very, 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 very pretty queen. And so the trumpets are announced. And so when the trumpets are announced, the prince says, "Oh, they found her." So the Grand Duke says, "Oh, just wait right here in the big waiting room, and the prince will be with you shortly." But the prince comes bursting in through the doors, and then when he sees Anastasia, he gets so confused and he says, "Am I in the right room?" Of course I'm in the right room. There has been a little mix-up here. Apparently, apparently, there's more than one girl who can fit the slipper, and I am very sorry to inconvenience you, but you are not what I'm looking for. He doesn't say it exactly like that, but he does say, I really do feel awful. I, I actually really do feel awful. I really do feel awful about this. I really do feel awful about this, but why don't I get the Grand Duke to drive you home safely? And then when he's about to leave, the the stepmother uses the magic wand to wipe Cinderella from his memory. And the mice see, and, and, and Gus and Jack see this. Oh, I forgot to mention, Cinderella snuck in there, and the mice split up. So the mice knows that he's been, brainwashed. The mice knows that he's under a spell, but Cinderella doesn't. But keep that in mind. That will come back later. That will come back later in this video. So, I forgot to tell you. Cinderella says that she is a royal mouse catcher. She's not though. That's just what she told Prudence when she tried to sneak into the castle as one of the servants. And I have to say, she did pretty well thinking on her feet, saying that she was a royal mouse catcher. She did pretty well. And while the mouse, and I have to say, Jack and Gus do so well distracting her, being in Prudence's kitchen, and the lady Prudence tries to catch the mice on her own, but she ends up dropping her head in some tomatoes while slipping on oranges. And then this is the part and 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 then after this, Cinderella says, "God, if we split up, we will find the prince faster." So they find the prince, and they see that the stepmother has put a spell on the prince. But Cinderella doesn't know this. So while she sees the prince, while she sees but I have to say this. I have to say this one thing. So the girl, so with the magic wand in the stepmother's hands, she actually does pretty well. With the magic wand in the stepmother's hands, she actually does pretty well. Because now that the prince is under the magic spell, he thinks that he's in love with Anastasia, and he proposed. to Anastasia while just finding out that she and the girl in the slipper. He proposed to her. And she went wild and said, woohoo! And did a cartwheel and everything. And the prince is just standing there. Well, he is down on his knees still. And and then the stepmother says, well, excellent. The wedding ceremony will take place tonight. And then the prince says, wonderful. I will go tell my father. And Cinderella is there spying on them while the girl says, we feel better already. And then the stepmother says, grace and poise, girls. Just remember, grace and poise. And then Anastasia tries to remember grace and poise, but she ends up breaking a harp. But that's okay. They can replace the harp instrument. I know they got money in us, so that's okay. So Lucifer is the only one that can smell Cinderella in the castle, but the stepmother calls for Lucifer and then he goes to her. So Cinderella's safe. And then she takes a deep breath of relief, like, phew, Lucifer didn't see me. That's a good thing, she thinks to herself probably. And then she sees the prince. And then the prince says, I'm sorry, have we met? And then she tries to tell him about last night at the ball. And then the prince says, yeah, I did dance with someone at the ball, Anastasia, and I cannot wait to marry her. And for a second there, Cinderella drops the net because she said she was the royal mouse catcher, right? So she drops the net where she catches the mice, and the prince helps her pick it up. And for a second there, it may seem like the spell is broken, but he tells Cinderella that in a matter of fact, I'm gonna marry the girl that I dance with tonight. And then Cinderella gets so excited because she thinks that it's her, but then when the princess Anastasia, Cinderella looks like Anastasia, but that's not right. And then the princess, I'm sorry, not right. And then the Lady Prudence, and then the Lady Prudence, and then the Lady Prudence catches her outside talking to the prince. And then the prince lets her go, and then Prudence says, I need her this instant. And then the princess, no, that's okay. I can see you're busy. I'll let you go. So now Cinderella's confused because even the prince thinks he's in love with Anastasia because Cinderella doesn't know that her stepmother has the wand, but the mice tell her that the stepmother had the wand and that he's under a magic spell. And then this is when Cinderella realizes, boys, we gotta get that wand. So now the girls are in the dining room, and the wedding cake is huge. And they have roses, flowers, and all these hors d'oeuvres that they are supposed to be, and all these hors d'oeuvres that they are supposed to be sampling. But but Anastasia snipped some roses, and then the stepmother, and then the stepmother, and and then and then and then and 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 then and then and then the stepmother, and then the stepmother, and then the stepmother, tell the servant to the king to 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 actually get rid of the roses because Anastasia's allergic. And then and then and then the servant says to the king, "Madam, I do not recall." And then the stepmother says, "I'm quite sure I mentioned that to you, quite sure." And then while him and then while him and then what and then while him and 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 then and then and then and then while him and the stepmother are having a word, Anastasia and Priscilla go over to the table to sample the to sample the hors d'oeuvres for the wedding, and Gisela starts eating these filled gelatin things, and then Anastasia starts to call her a pig, and then a food fight happens because when Anastasia called her a pig, Gisela put an apple in her mouth, and then Anastasia spit out the apple, and then they just start having a food fight with each other. And then the stepmother said, "Girls," and then they tipped over the cake, and then you will never guess who walked in when they tipped over the cake. The prince and the princess' father, and they blamed it on the servant to the king. And then he said, "Don't mind me, I will have it cleaned up in no time." So the prince introduces Anastasia as his bride to be, and Anastasia said, "It's an honor, Your Majesty." And the cake, and then the cake drops in the king's hands, and then he puts the cake on the servant. Well, not the servant. I think no. No, that's not his name. The Grand Duke. He puts the cake on the Grand Duke's shoulder. And then the princess, so, well, who's up for a dance? And then the stepmother tries to tell Anastasia, that fight back there could have cost us everything. Don't ruin this. And then Gisela says, go get 'em, Twinkle Toes. And then Anastasia starts dancing with the prince, but she keeps stepping on his foot. And then the Grand Duke is so stressed out because he knows if stuff keeps going the way it's going when Anastasia arrived at the castle, that there will be no wedding. And he's afraid what the king will do to him, but the king wishes to have a word with Anastasia. The family tries to go with her, but the king says, I need to have a word with her alone. And then when he talks to her, you think she will be in trouble, right? Wrong. It turned out that the king and his lovely wife, she stepped on his feet when they were men and when they fell in love for the first time. And he gives Anastasia the most prized possession, a seashell that the queen kept because they found it by the water the day that the king met the queen. They found a seashell by the water, and when their hands touched, that's when he knew that he found true love with the queen. And then he tells Anastasia, there is no more force powerful in the world than true love. And then Anastasia says, thank you. Meanwhile, we have Cinderella peeking through the door and seeing that the stepmother put the wand and we see Cinderella peeking through the door and seeing that the stepmother put the wand in a drawer and the keys in her pocket. So Cinderella says, I have got to get in there and 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 then and then and 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 then Gus and 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 then Gus and Jack say, no, too dangerous. And then Cinderella says, all right, but whatever you do, stay clear of Lucifer. So they try to get the key. They end up getting the key, but since Lucifer is sleeping by the fireplace, his tail catches on fire, and then everybody tries to put it out, and Anastasia hits him with a pillow, and then water splashes everywhere, and then the fire ends up coming out, but the house is a mess, so they call the maid, and the maid ends up being Cinderella, and they end up and Gus and Jack end up getting the wand, and Cinderella says, you're not gonna get away with this. And then the stepmother says, well, we already have. And then she says, I don't think so. Jack, Gus. And then they all end up jumping out of there, and everybody just starts running. Okay, here's what I have a problem with. If you start running, put the mice in the magic wand in your pocket, because Lucifer is chasing after the mice, and I guess Lucifer is chasing after the magic wand, but they keep using the magic to turn Lucifer into all different things, turning him big, small, and even into a jackbox. But none of it worked, because they just end up turning him big again. But I do have to say, as a kitty, he is pretty cute, but we soon learn that even as a kitty, he can still eat mice, because Gus goes to pat him, and then he ends up biting at Gus. Then Jack tries to save him, and then Lucifer starts biting on them both, and then they turn him big again. And then the stepmother called on the guards, and then the guards tried to catch her, but they end up falling, and then another set of guards start to catch her, and then they think they got her, because while the bluebirds get the prince, Gus and Jack throw her the magic wand, and she tried to make a wish to break the spell. And she tries to make it, Cinderella tries to make a wish to break the spell, but as soon as she tries to say the magic words, she gets arrested, and the stepmother grabs the wand, and then she tries to tell the and then she tried to tell the prince, you are under a spell, that's why you don't remember me, please just listen. But Cinderella does touch his hand, and then he feels, and then and then and and then and then and 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 then and then and then when he touches their hand, he feels that magic spark that his father said he felt when he touched the mother's hand for the first time. It was only for a little bit, but still he felt it. And although Anastasia fits the slipper, when he touched her hand, he felt nothing. When he touched Anastasia's hand, he didn't feel that magic spark. When he touched Anastasia's hand. And then when Cinderella gets carried away, the stepmother gives an order of put her on the next ship leaving the kingdom. I want her banished forever. And then Gisela says, nice try, but we won. A slip of the tongue, no doubt. Could the prince says, you won? Well, what do you mean? And then Gisela says, well, nothing, never mind. One question here. how does the stepmother have power? Well, like, did the king put you in charge? Like, how are they gonna follow your orders? And another thing, Gisela, keep your mouth shut. Everything was going perfectly well until you said that. And then the stepmother says to Gisela, the stepmother says, keep your mouth shut or you're next. And then the prince tells his father that, Dad, something strange is going on. And then the dad says, I will say my son is finally getting married. And then the prince says, no, I mean something wrong. And 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 then the dad says, you wanted the girl in the glass slipper, and now you got her. And then the prince says, I know, but that's what I'm worried about. And then and then the and then and then and then the mice get his attention, and then the mice tell him that he's under a magic spell from the stepmother, and that Cinderella is the girl he's been looking for all along. So he goes to find her, and the dad tells him, I forbid you to take another step down these stairs. and and then the dad tells him, I forbid you to take another step down these stairs. And then the prince says, okay, so he jumps out. So he jumps out of the window and onto the horse, and he is off to the boating station. And then and then and 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 then he gets this guard, and he says, the servant girl, where is she? And so when he's about to leave the castle, the father says, stop. And then the prince says, Dad, trust me. And then he says, son, I do trust you. It's just the talking mice I'm worried about. So he ends up going to the boating dock anyway, and he ends up falling onto the boat because he tried to get his horse to jump out the window, but the horse flies him off of his back, saying, I'm not jumping through no window. And he lands on a ship. He cuts the sails. And then him and Cinderella are reunited because they touch hands. And then all his memories become flooding back. Why they did not come flooding back when he first touched the hand, I don't know. When they first touched hands, when she was trying to tell him about the magic spell, I do not know. But anyway, they touch hands, and and he remembered everything, and he proposes, even though he doesn't have a ring. But the proposal is so cute, I don't even care. He proposes, she said yes, and then she laughs and says, well, actually, it's not Cinderella, it's Cinderella. And then the princess, oh, Cinderella. And then he grabs her and spins her around, and then she laughs. And then we cut to, it's not over yet, the stepmother says. And then Gisela and Anastasia says, what? And then the stepmother says, the prince has gone after Cinderella. And then the prince and Cinderella come back, and then the king order orders 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 that the stepmother that that the stepmother arrest Anastasia and her family, or 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 make them leave the tower. I'm not sure, but before the guards can get in there, the stepmother the stepmother takes the wand and she asks Anastasia. And she asks Anastasia, "You do want the prince to love you, don't you?" And then Anastasia says, "Yes, more than anything." And then the stepmother says, "Well, do exactly what I say." And by the time the guards get there, they disappear into thin air, and they search every inch of the castle, but the Grand Duke comes back and says, "Your Majesty, we have searched every inch of this castle, and it appears that they have fled." And then the king gets mad, and then the king gets mad and says, "Well, search my entire kingdom. I want them found and arrested immediately." And then the father tells him, "Please tell me this is the girl that you want to marry." And then he looks at Cinderella and says, "Well, Dad, the stars are shining brighter, just like you said." And then the dad gets happy and says, "Well, what are we waiting for? Get a dress. Bake a even bigger cake. A wedding is on tonight." And then, while Cinderella and everybody getting ready for the wedding, she hears the stepmother say, "Oh, how lovely you look, my dear." And then we come to find out that the stepmother has changed Anastasia into Cinderella. So now, since Anastasia looks like Cinderella, the stepmother, the 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 stepmother, the stepmother uses her magic to put the real Cinderella in 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 into a pumpkin, and then the pumpkin takes a horse. Whoa. Once Cinderella tries to ask for the horse's head, tries to grab onto the horse, the pumpkin comes to life, takes the horse by the neck, and she turns Lucifer the cat into a human and says, "Lucifer, make absolutely certain they do not come back alive." And so, while Lucifer drives, Gus, Jack, and Cinderella try to stop the carriage. Cinderella tries to break her way out, but they realize that they have to reach the pin. So Gus tries to reach the pin, but Lucifer gets distracted by him that he can't reach the pin. But Jack, but Jack, but 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 Jack is on Lucifer's hat, and he distracts Lucifer, and Lucifer still grabs Gus, and Cinderella out of the carriage, and she is trying to get to Gus, and she gets to the top, and she gets to Gus, and she breaks the seat that Lucifer is sitting on. And she ended up, and she, and, 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 and she ended up, breaking the carriage as well. And then jumping on the horse, getting the mice, and jumping on the horse together. And then they end up riding up to a cliff where they're all safe and sound. And then Jack says, "Now what are we gonna do?" And then Cinderella says, "Well, I'm not gonna miss my own wedding." And then they say, "Woohoo!" So they make it to the doors, and the prince says, "I do," but Anastasia, as Cinderella, is kind of thinking about it. And she says, I. And then she takes the prince's hand, and then she says, I don't. And then when Cinderella gets in there, she says, Anastasia. And then Anastasia says, Cinderella. And then everybody is shocked. And then the stepmother comes from behind the curtain. Curtain and says, "You spoiled little ingrate. I gave you everything you ever wanted, Anastasia." And then Anastasia says, "Well, I want someone to love me for free." Anastasia, you have the best arc, girl. They gave you the best arc in this movie. I love the fact that she said that. I want someone to love me for me. And the king ends up and the king says to the guards, "Guard, arrest that woman." But she uses the magic wand to turn them all to chickens. And then and then and and then and 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 then she wants and 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 then and then she wants to use the magic wand on Anastasia. But Cinderella jumps in front of her and says, "Stop, no more." And then the stepmother tries to use the wand on both of them, but the prince jumps in and says, "Cinderella, no!" And so he uses his sword, and then the magic goes back to the stepmother, and the stepmother disappears, but we don't know where to. And the wand ends up being free. So the wand is free now, and Anastasia walks Cinderella, and Anastasia walks Cinderella to. And Anastasia walks Cinderella to the prince, and Anastasia says, "This is the real Cinderella, your true love." And then they touch hands again, and then the prince says, "It's you." And then Anastasia takes them, and then Anastasia takes the magic wand, and then then she turns herself back to herself instead of Cinderella. And then everybody is still shocked, but Cinderella thanks Anastasia, and together they both say the magic words to make the fairy godmother to 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 hmm, 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 to 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 make the fairy godmother reappear. And then the fairy godmother reappears, and then the fairy godmother reappears, and she fixed Cinderella's dress. And then the king says, "Well, does anyone want to marry my son?" And then Cinderella says, "I do." And and then the pastor, who passed out from shock, the poor thing, says, I now pronounce you man and wife." And Anastasia tries to give the shell back and says, "Your Majesty, I don't deserve this." And then the king says, "Everybody deserves a chance for true love." So he gives it to her as a gift, which I think is a very nice moment. And and Anastasia ends up hugging him to say thank you. And one part that just really annoyed me when the fairy godmother said, "Would you two like me to return?" And one part that really annoyed me was like when the fairy godmother said, "Would you two like for me to return you to your former lives?" And then Cinderella and Prince Charming looked at each other and said, "Our former lives?" And then the and then the and then and then the godmother says, "Yes, you see, you two were already." And then she looked at them and saw how happy they were. I was like, "Would you just give it a rest, let them get married?" And then the fairy godmother says, "Oh, never mind." And so they kiss, and they are remarried. Oh, and at the end of the movie, we see Gisela and Anastasia as frogs, and then they get turned into maids, and then they both scream like, "Ah!" And then that is the end of the movie. Bye, and see you guys in my next video.